Any type of investigation into a crime, especially a serious crime like murder, demands an intensive, honest gathering and analysis of the evidence in the case. This includes taking the statements of all witnesses as quickly as possible when memories are freshest. This is true no matter how important or unimportant a murder victim is perceived. Every American citizen deserves justice. In the assassination of a United States president, the imperative to gather evidence, interview witnesses, and perform accurate and honest analysis of crime scene evidence and materials is even more important. In the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dealey Plaza on November 22, 1963, this process of investigation was supposed to happen through a body called the Warren Commission. What resulted was not an honest evaluation of the facts. Evidence was lost, stolen, or intentionally disregarded. Witness statements were tampered with. Some witness statements were completely made up. Important questions were never answered. And maybe most importantly, many witnesses who would have testified in opposition to the Commission's preconceived notion of a lone nut shooter simply were not called to testify. The commissioners pretended that the voluminous report, 888 pages, was comprehensive. It was anything but. About 80% of the report is simply ancillary or background information, not evidentiary analysis or witness testimony to really get to the truth of the assassination. Let's begin by examining some key witnesses in Dealey Plaza who were never called before the Warren Commission, or who had their testimony limited or changed. The greatest admiration and gratitude go to the late Mark Lane for filming these interviews and giving us testimony that the Warren Commission chose not to include or to limit.
As the presidential limousine was rounding the curve on Elm Street, there was a loud explosion. At the time, I didn't know what it was, but it sounded like a loud firecracker or a gunshot. And it sounded like it came from the left and in front of us, towards the wooden fence. And there was a puff of smoke that came underneath the trees on the embankment. I was talking with a patrolman Foster at the time, and as soon as we heard the shots, we ran around to the wooden fence. And when we got there, there was no one there, but there was footprints in the mud around the fence, and there was footprints on the wooden 2x4 railing on the fence.
Were you questioned by the Dallas police on that day?
Yes, I was.
Did you give your name to the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell them what you've just told me?
Yes, I did.
Were you subsequently questioned by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
About a month later, I was questioned by the FBI.
Did you tell them what you told me and what you told the Dallas police?
Yes, I did.
Were you ever called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, sir, I wasn't.
Did you look in any particular direction when you heard the shots?
Yes, I looked over to where I thought the shot came from, and I saw a puff of smoke still lingering underneath the trees in front of the wooden fence.
Is this the exact spot you were standing on November 22nd, Mr. Holland?
That's correct. This is the exact spot that I was standing November the 22nd, waiting for the parade.
And where did you hear that third shot come from?
Right over about 20 or 30 feet from the other end of that little picket fence.
And where was the smoke that you saw?
It drifted right out underneath those green trees, those two trees.
From behind the fence?
From behind the fence. And this is where I saw the smoke from the third shot.
The Warren Commission published just a very small portion of your testimony and used your testimony as proof that no shots could have come from behind the fence. Did they accurately and fairly use your testimony?
They are wrong, because my testimony, and I made it very clear, that there was a fourth shot fired, and one of those shots came from behind that picket fence.
Is this where you were sitting on November 22nd, Mr. Price?
Yes, sir.
Right here?
Right here on this spot.
And where did you think you heard the shots come from?
From behind the overpass over there, triple overpass. That's where I thought the shots were coming from.
And where did you see the man run?
Over behind that wooden fence, past the cars, and over behind the Texas Depository building.
Did you give that information to the Dallas Sheriff's Department on the very day of the assassination?
Yes, I did. I'd say in about 30 minutes after the assassination.
Were you ever called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, sir. No, sir.
Fortunately, I was probably 15 to 20 feet away from the president when it happened.
Tell us exactly what you saw, sir.
He was coming down the street, and my 5-year-old boy and myself were by ourselves on the grass there on Commerce Street.
You were a ranger during the war, correct?
Yes, sir, I was a ranger during the war. Took part in the invasion of France and was shot a couple of times. So, as I say, it's possibly like swimming. I hadn't heard that sound for many a year, but you don't forget it once you've heard a shot rounding, coming close to you.
Did you make a statement to the Dallas Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I did.
How long did you remain in the Dallas Sheriff's Office that day?
I would say about 3 hours to 4 hours.
Were you among the closest witnesses to the limousine when the shot struck the president?
Yes, sir, I would have to say that, if not the closest, one of the closest to the unfortunate incident. I did get a view of something I'll never forget.
Were you called as a witness by the Warren Commission?
No, I was not called by the Warren Commission to testify.
Mrs. Clemens, where were you on November 22nd, 1963?
I was working for Miss Smotherman, 327 East 10th, just down the block from where Tippett was killed.
Did you know Officer Tippett?
Yes, I saw him pretty many times.
And did you hear the shots?
Yes, I heard the shots.
And what did you do?
I ran out into the street and looked down the street, and I ran back down the street where he was lying, and I looked at him.
Now, when you heard the shots and you went out of the house, did you see a man with a gun?
Yes, I did.
What was he doing?
Oh, he was reloading it. When I said he was reloading his gun.
And how would you describe that man?
Well, he's kind of chunky. He's kind of heavy. He wasn't a very big man.
Was he tall or short?
Yeah, he's kind of short guy.
Short and heavy?
Yes.
And was there any other man there?
Yes, there's one on the other side of the street. All I know, he told him to go.
Mrs. Clemens, the man who had the gun, did he make any motion at all to the other man across the street?
No more told him to go.
Well, he waved his hand and said, go on.
Go.
And then what happened with the man with the gun?
He unloaded and reloaded.
And what did the other man do?
Man kept going straight down the street.
And then did they go in opposite directions?
Yes, they was. They wasn't together. They went this way from each other. The one done the shooting went this way. The other went straight down past street that way.
What was the man who did not do the shooting, but the man who went in the other direction from the man with the gun? What was he wearing, if you remember?
Well, first I remember he had looked like light khakis and a white shirt.
And was he tall or short?
He was tall.
And was he heavy or thin?
He was thin.
But the one who did the one who had the gun, seconds after Tippett was shot, he was short.
Yes,
he was heavy.
He was short and kind of heavy.
Now, did you testify before the Warren Commission about this case?
I haven't said anything to anyone.
Did anyone come to see you after the murder of Officer Tippett?
Yes, he was a man came, I don't know what he was. He came to my house and talked to me, but I don't know what he looked like a policeman to me.
He did. Did he have a gun?
Yes, he wore a gun.
Mrs. Clemens, how long after Tippett was shot did this man with a gun come to visit you?
About 2 days. It was about 2 days. Said that I might get hurt. Someone might hurt me if I would talk.
About what you saw?
What I saw. He just told me to be the best if I didn't say anything because I might get hurt.
What this next witness, Lee Bowers, relates is especially troubling. Not only did the Warren Commission's questioner, Joseph Ball, cut him off in the middle of his testimony, but he was reprimanded by the FBI when relating information about the sound of the shots he heard during the assassination.
Immediately after the shots were fired, there, of course, was mass confusion, to put it mildly. But the area was immediately sealed off by, I would say, at least 50 police within 3 to 5 minutes. The first one to appear on the scene, other than those, who, of course, who were standing around, including 2 on top of the triple underpass, was one who rode a motorcycle up the incline coming up from the lower portion of Elm Street. And he rode perhaps 2/3 of the way up or more before he deserted his motorcycle. At the time of the shooting, in the vicinity of where the 2 men I've described were, there was a flash of light, or there was something which occurred which caught my eye in this immediate area on the embankment. And what this was, I could not state at that time, and at this time I could not identify it, other than there was some unusual occurrence, a flash of light or smoke or something which caused me to feel like something out of the ordinary had occurred there.
In reading your testimony, Mr. Bowers, it appears that just as you were about to make that statement, you were interrupted in the middle of the sentence by the commission counsel, who then went into another area.
Well, that's correct. I was there only to tell them what they asked, and so that when they seemed to want to cut off the conversation, I felt like that was, as far as I was concerned, that was the end of it.
Mr. Bowers, how many shots did you hear?
There were 3 shots, and these were spaced with 1 shot, then a pause, and then 2 shots in very close order, such as perhaps almost on top of each other, while there was some pause between the first and the second shots.
Did you tell that to the Dallas police?
Yes, I told this to the police, and then also told it to the FBI, and also I had a discussion 2 or 3 days later with them concerning this, and they made no comment, other than the fact that when I stated I felt like the second and third shots could not have been fired from the same rifle, they reminded me that I wasn't an expert, and I had to agree.
After I entered, there was a group of nurses and doctors standing around with a lot of concern, and Jack Ruby came up to me. He said something to the effect that, "Isn't this just terrible?" And he looked as if he was extremely distressed. I shook hands with him, and I had known him previously, and Ruby asked me what I thought about his closing his places of business for a day or two out of concern for what had happened. And I told him I thought that was a good idea, and to please excuse me, I had to go on. It was very clear to me who I had talked to, and who I had called by name, and who had called me by name, and who I had shaken hands with and everything. But when the Warren Commission report came out, they said that probably under the stress of everything that was going on, that I most likely was confused, and that I talked to Ruby at the police station several hours later. I was dismayed when I picked up my copy of the Warren Commission report and discovered what they had decided about my testimony. And among other things, I immediately began to wonder, who else they had talked to, who they chose not to believe, and why.
Julia Ann Mercer is another witness who had her testimony blatantly changed by the Warren Commission. Mercer testified that she saw Jack Ruby drop off two men with a rifle from a truck parked by the grassy knoll about a half hour before the assassination. She identified Ruby from police pictures on Saturday, a day before Ruby was to shoot Oswald, and Mercer had never seen him before. When the Warren Commission report came out, Mercer was dismayed to read that her testimony had been intentionally and drastically changed. Her name was even forged on a signed affidavit. She was married to a Republican congressman, and they were so frightened by the report, she went into hiding for an extended period.
Of his desk, it's a large double drawer in which he has numerous manila folders where they keep various notes. There's a folder for each agent, and they keep various notations and routing slips, error forms, and things like that in these folders. He reached down and took out the memorandum and the note in question, and he handed it to me, and he said, in effect, Oswald's dead now, there can be no trial. Here, get rid of this. I then proceeded to tear it up. In his presence, he said, no, get it out of here. I don't even want it in this office. Get rid of it. I then took it out and destroyed it.
And how did you destroy it?
I took it into the washroom and flushed it down the drain.
Did you testify before the Warren Commission?
I did.
Did you volunteer or give any information about the note or its destruction?
I did not.
Why not?
I wasn't asked.
Did you give any information or volunteer any information with respect to your instructions regarding Commission Exhibit 103?
No, sir.
Why not?
I wasn't asked.
And did you think about volunteering the information?
No, sir.
Why not?
I was instructed when I went up there that I was to only answer the questions that were set to me, and I was not to expand on anything and not to elaborate, to only answer the questions that were put to me.
And who gave you those instructions?
Given to me by at least two officials in Dallas and at least one in FBI headquarters. They were given to me by Mr. Shanklin, Mr. Gimberling, who was a supervisor who succeeded Mr. Howe, and also by former Assistant Director Alan Belmont.
And finally, perhaps worst of all, the Warren Commission members actually invented a report from a Dallas FBI agent named Bardwell Odom. They used the fake report to try and support the magic bullet theory. Here are the details. This is the bullet that supposedly did all the damage. Let's start with a chronology of how and where CE-399 was found. Parkland Hospital senior engineer Mr. Darrell C. Tomlinson was moving some wheeled stretchers when he bumped one of the stretchers against a wall and a bullet rolled out. He called for help and was joined by Mr. O.P. Wright, Parkland's personnel director. They examined the bullet together. Now this is important. Both men will never, from this moment on, ever testify or describe the bullet they found that day as being CE-399. Let me say that again. In every interview and statement either of the men will make for the rest of their lives, they will state that CE-399 is not the bullet they found that day. They both will state repeatedly that the bullet they found that day had a pointed tip and was definitely not CE-399. Wait, didn't the Warren Commission present a report by Secret Service Special Agent Bardwell Odom, Commission Exhibit number 2011, stating that he, Odom, showed CE-399 to Tomlinson and Wright on June 24th, 1964, and that they agreed it looked like the bullet they found? No, he did not. Let me repeat. Odom did not write that report. In his own words to Dr. Aguilar and Hosea Thompson, I didn't show it to anybody at Parkland. I didn't have any bullet. I don't think I ever saw it even. Odom said that he never had any bullet related to the Kennedy assassination in his possession, whether during the FBI's investigation in 1964 or at any other time. Asked whether he might have forgotten the episode, Mr. Odom remarked that he would never have forgotten investigating so important a piece of evidence, but even if he had done the work and later forgotten about it, he said he certainly would have turned in a 302 report covering something that important, and no 302 report exists. But there is even better proof. That's the testimony of Darrell C. Tomlinson before the Warren Commission. It was taken on March 20th, 1964, right at Parkland Hospital by our friend Arlen Specter. And remember, Tomlinson is the man who found the bullet. There was only one question that needed to be asked that day of Tomlinson. It was obvious to everyone. That question is CE-399 the bullet that you found that day here at Parkland Hospital? Incredibly, Specter never asked Tomlinson that question. As a matter of fact, he asked Tomlinson no questions about any aspect of the bullet. He didn't ask one question about the bullet Tomlinson found, including if CE-399 was that bullet. He couldn't ask because he knew the answer would be no. As you can see, there's 5 pages of Warren Commission questioning of Tomlinson by Specter, and all Specter asks about is the position and location of the stretchers and maybe where the bullet was found. Even in that testimony, Tomlinson kept saying that he couldn't be sure where the bullet came from or even which stretcher it really came off of. This failure of Arlen Specter to ask the only obvious question, is CE-399 the bullet you found that day? It's some of the best evidence that the Warren Commission investigation was a total sham. Let's go back to Parkland Hospital now in 1963. After examining the bullet together, Tomlinson and Wright passed it along to one of the U.S. Secret Service agents who were in the hospital, Secret Service Special Agent Richard Johnson. Johnson then carried the bullet back to Washington, D.C., and handed it to James Rowley, the chief of the Secret Service. Rowley, in turn, gave the bullet to FBI agent Elmer Lee Todd, who carried it to Agent Robert Frazier in the FBI's crime lab. All right, so after Tomlinson and Wright find the bullet, they turn it directly over to Secret Service agent Richard Johnson, and he turned it over to Secret Service Chief James Rowley. Guess what? Both of these men also state that the bullet they received that day was not CE-399. But the Warren Commission couldn't cover up this as easily with a fake report. Let's go back and look at that Warren Commission report number 2011. CE-2011 reported about Secret Service agents Johnson and Rowley. A memo from the FBI's Dallas field office dated 6/24/64 reported that on June 24, Special Agent Richard E. Johnson and James Rowley, Chief, advised Special Agent Elmer Lee Todd, Washington field office, that they were unable to identify rifle bullet C1, which is number 399, which before the Warren Commission had logged it in as 399, was called C1 by inspection. So on June 24, 1964, FBI agent Todd, who received the bullet from Rowley, the head of the Secret Service, returned with a bullet to get Secret Service agents Johnson and Rowley to identify it. Commission Exhibit 2011 reports that both Johnson and Rowley advised Todd that they could not identify this bullet as the one they saw on the day of the assassination. Commission Exhibit 2011 contains no comment about the failure. What does all this mean? It means that someone wrote a fake report from Secret Service agent Bardwell Odom stating that Tomlinson and Wright identified CE-399 when clearly they did just the opposite, saying no way was CE-399 the bullet they found. It also means that the next two people to receive the bullet found at Parkland, Special Agent Richard Johnson and Secret Service Chief James Rowley, also refused to identify CE-399 as the bullet they handled and turned over to the FBI. It means that U.S. intelligence services not only knew in advance of the assassination attempt and may have participated, but that U.S. intelligence services actively participated in the cover-up. Documents still illegally not being shown to the American public may well prove this intelligence service complicity.